On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast, Tesla held its Q4 earnings call this week, and among other things, it contained good news for those of you with Hardware 3 cars who've bought the FSD package. That, plus the rest of the highlights from the call, along with my analysis, coming up next. What's happening, friends? I'm Ryan McCaffrey, flanked by two four-legged friends, Daisy the Boxer and Mine of the Future Service Dog. Welcome to Ride the Lightning. It is the Tesla unofficial podcast, episode 496, and I'm publishing this one on February 2nd, 2025, recording it on the evening of January 31st. And I begin this week's podcast with a quick correction / mini apology from last week's show. As it turns out, the new Model Y launch series is not eligible for the $500 referral discount. The old, still available Model Y in any variant is, but the launch series new Model Y is not. My apologies for not catching that ahead of last week's episode, and thank you to the handful of folks that contacted me to let me know about that. I guess it remains to be seen whether the new Model Y, once it enters just general regular production, once the launch series has ended, whether or not the new Model Y will be eligible for that referral discount. My gut says no, that the demand is going to be strong enough where they're not going to bother offering the $500 referral discount. But as always, or as is often the case here, I hope I'm wrong on that one. Speaking of the new Model Y, if you've been thinking about ordering that launch series, Juniper, that new Model Y, with a white interior specifically, and you haven't ordered yet, I regret to inform you that the white interior option for the launch series is sold out. And I can't think of any time that I've ever seen this happen before with Tesla, where a particular option on a car sells out in any context, under any circumstance. I mean, I guess they must have only produced a certain number of white interior pieces for the launch series, and those were quickly gobbled up, probably in part because it didn't cost $1,000 extra, because that $60,000 price is all inclusive. Which also makes me wonder if a lot of the people ordering launch series new Model Y are choosing the more expensive paint options. I mean, there are only 4 choices of paint at all, and 3 of them are an additional cost. So I wonder if people are choosing the Ultra Red or the Quicksilver more so than they might normally, since it's the same price either way. But I have to think that another thing that we can reasonably extrapolate from this is that it would seem to me, based on the fact that the white interior has already sold out, that Tesla has a set number of launch series total production in mind, like just for the actual how many launch series vehicles there are going to be, which would be unlike the Cybertruck Foundation series that seemed to go on until Tesla was ready to go into general production, meaning in that specific case that they just ran out of buyers, people willing to pay 6 figures to get the Foundation Series Cybertruck. With the Launch Series Y, which of course is so crucial to the company, well, the Y itself, not the Launch Series specifically, but the Y is so crucial to the company's bottom line that I guess Tesla is not going to just keep building launch series until they run out of demand for the $60,000 all-in price on that. They must clearly have, based on this, a set number in mind. And if the white interior sold out that quickly, either the launch series isn't going to last that long, or, because it could be both, that they just under-anticipated the demand for the white interior in that context, again, of not having to pay extra to get that white interior. So now, if I'm right about this hypothesis, I want to know what the number is, what the number of total launch series Model Y is going to be. We may never find out, or it's something that maybe could come up on the next earnings call if hopefully the retail shareholders upvote it enough to ask it. We'll have to wait and see. Before I get to the earnings call and shareholder letter, which of course are the main courses that I'm serving on the menu this week, I unfortunately have some bad regional news to tell you about that directly affects those of you in Washington State, but certainly also indirectly affects Tesla overall and indirectly affects the greater EV movement overall. And that is, there is an attempt being made right now to make sales of vehicles directly to consumers, aka how Tesla sells vehicles, not through dealers. This also applies to Rivian and Lucid. That's how the three of those all EV companies do business. There is an attempt being made to make direct sales of vehicles to consumers illegal in the state of Washington. I want to say thank you to loyal listener and longtime generous Patreon supporter Jared Brown, who forwarded me the email from Tesla sent out to Washington State Tesla owners, which reads, quote, "A bill introduced in Washington by Senator Saldana, Senate Bill 5377, attempts to force Tesla to discontinue our sales activities across the state. As a result, Washington residents could need to travel out of state to complete their new Tesla electric vehicle purchase. There could also be impacts to Tesla's warranty and other service activities in Washington. Washington should focus on increasing EV adoption in the state, not stepping backward to reduce competition and consumer choice. Let your state representatives know that you oppose SB 5377 and that Washington residents should be able to purchase EVs from Tesla and other EV manufacturers in their home state." End quote. Well, so long as I don't forget between now and the time that I'm publishing this podcast, I will try to remember to put a link to the contact form that will take you directly to the Washington state elected representatives, the way to contact them. So there's a link from Tesla's website straight to that, so I will do my best to remember to get that in the episode description for you this week. By the way, speaking of the referral discount from a few minutes ago, the referral program does continue on here into Q1, into 2025, a new year. It doesn't currently apply to the launch series Model Y, but it applies to everything else. So if you're a first-time Tesla buyer, make sure to get your discount. It's $500 off a 3 or a Legacy Model Y, or $1,000 off of a Cybertruck Model S or Model X. So make sure you order your car with someone's referral link. It has to be ordered with a referral link. If you'd like to use mine, the link is in the description, but it's also ts.la/Ryan73014. Just type that into any web browser on a desktop or mobile device. It'll take you to the landing page on Tesla.com where you choose which car you want. You click on it, configure it how you want, click order, and you'll see that referral discount baked in. Also, those of you kind enough to be supporting my efforts here on Ride the Lightning on Patreon, which is the primary way that you can support me if you so choose, the Lightning Round mini episode, I do these every single week on Patreon at that $10 level or higher. So if you're backing me at the $10 per month level or higher, you get those bonus mini episodes every week. This week's was about my impressions of the old Model Y after finally getting to drive one this week. I had actually never driven a Model Y. I'd been in it a few times, several times, but never actually driven one until this week. So it was a performance Model Y specifically, which was actually even better because then I could more directly compare it to my 2018 Model 3 performance, because it's kind of not really fair to compare the still current, for the moment, Model Y performance to the new performance Model 3. Anyway, that was a fun lightning round topic. So if you'd like to hear that, and you'd like to support me on Patreon, you can go to the website, which is patreon.com/Tesla podcast, and you can join the Patreon and hear all 130, maybe even more, 130 something of those lightning rounds are up there for you right now. Patreon.com/Tesla podcast. Okay, let's dig into the Q4 shareholder letter, and then I will get you the highlight clips and analysis from the Q4 earnings call. The shareholder letter gets released first, about an hour before the call, so you get some time to read through the letter, digest it, and then the Tesla executive team jumps on that earnings call, and we hear what they have to say. So starting with the shareholder letter, I will begin by reading you, as I typically do, the summary statement that opens the letter. Tesla says, Q4 was a record quarter for both vehicle deliveries and energy storage deployments. We expect Model Y to once again be the best-selling vehicle of any kind globally for the full year 2024, and we have made it even better with the new Model Y now launched in all markets. In 2024, we made significant investments in infrastructure that will spur the next wave of growth for the company, including vehicle manufacturing capabilities for new models, AI training compute, and energy storage manufacturing capacity. Affordability remains top of mind for customers, and we continue to review every aspect of our cost of goods sold, or COGS, per vehicle to help alleviate this concern. In Q4, COGS per vehicle reached its lowest level ever at under $35,000, driven largely by raw material cost improvement, helping us to partially offset our investment in compelling financing and lease options. I was one of the people that took advantage of that compelling financing. The energy business achieved another record Q4 with its highest ever gross profit generation. Construction of Mega Factory Shanghai was completed in December and will begin ramping this quarter. Powerwall deployments achieved another record quarter as we continue to ramp Powerwall 3 production and launch in additional markets. 2025 will be a seminal year in Tesla history as FSD Supervised continues to rapidly improve with the aim of ultimately exceeding human levels of safety. This will eventually unlock an unsupervised FSD option for our customers and the robotaxi business, which we expect to begin launching later this year in parts of the US. We also continue to work on launching FSD Supervised in Europe and China in 2025. Well, as I've said, the Y will probably slip out of the number one best-selling car of any kind spot this year, 2025, because of the inevitable production hiccup between the outgoing Model Y and the Juniper. But the Model Y will probably be back next year, and I say probably only because if something beats it, it's probably going to be another Tesla, the 2.5 cars, as I've been referring to them, unless those cars can individually, one or both of them, individually eclipse the Model Y in 2026, which I can't rule out, even though history suggests that they are going to need more than 6 months, aka the start of 2026, to scale past Model Y production levels. My second comment on that opening statement from the shareholder letter, I am glad to hear Tesla call out affordability for customers. The fact that they called out things that they are doing to alleviate that concern on the customer side, to me, suggests that Tesla will pass those COGS savings on to us. You know what else helps with affordability for most customers? That $7,500 point-of-sale tax credit, which I would love to see Tesla throw their weight behind in support of, rather than being okay with it going away. We'll have to see how that develops. Finally, I also love in this opening statement that big, bold statement that this year will be a seminal year for the company because of the progress of FSD. They are bullish, they are confident, that fires me up, and there's more of that bullishness to come on the earnings call clips that I'm about to play you. I mean, when it comes to FSD specifically, if you've had a chance to drive it, as I've been very privileged now to do so since I've been lucky enough to take delivery of a Hardware 4 car here recently, version 13 absolutely is a noticeable step forward. I'm not saying it's the be-all, end-all, time to go to sleep in the car, but it is a noticeable improvement, and I can't wait to see how the next few months goes and how the next version, when we get to version 14, where are we going to be with that? Okay, next, we move to my favorite chart in the shareholder letter every quarter. Yes, the current installed annual vehicle capacity chart that lists all of the publicly acknowledged vehicles. And, much to my delight, we actually have a change this month, because usually quarter to quarter, it tends to stay the same, but not this month. Sadly, that change is not to the next-gen Roadster, which remains listed as simply in development in a TBD region. In other words, they're not saying where they're going to build it yet. But instead, the previously listed next-gen platform has been replaced by Cybercab. Strangely, the Model 2.5, despite being very publicly mentioned by Tesla on the last few earnings calls, though obviously not by my little shorthand name or any other formal name, it isn't listed here when it probably should be, with a status of in development, since it's due to begin production in like 5 months. So I found that a little bit strange in that annual vehicle capacity chart. But from that same page, where it looks at capacity updates by region, they write, preparations are underway across our existing factories for the launch of new products in 2025, including more affordable models. See, there you go. There's another mention of it. New Model Y has launched on the configurator globally, with production ramp and deliveries beginning later in Q1. Then, as we go by region, I'm only going to read you one region, and that's the US, where Tesla writes, California, Nevada, and Texas semi-factory construction continued in Q4 and recently completed roof and wall enclosure of the main building area. Sorry, I read that wrong because I pasted it wrong in my notes. It meant by California, Nevada, Texas, that's just the US group. So then it's actually just talking about the semi-factory there. I apologize. Anyway, they say preparation is underway for Cybercab lines at Gigafactory Texas, with volume production planned for 2026. Given its unique functionality, including power share, stainless steel exterior, enhanced durability, and bioweapon defense mode, we deployed a fleet of Cybertrucks equipped with Starlink in the Los Angeles area to help first responders and those impacted by the fires get access to electricity and Wi-Fi, which of course I had told you about on a recent episode. We expect Cybertruck to be eligible for the IRA consumer tax credit, helping to improve affordability and access for even more customers. So, of course, by volume production planned for 2026 for Cybercab, it could mean that the first deliveries happen in early 2026 and volume production gets there by late 2026, or if you want to get bullish, it could mean that initial production on the Cybercab begins at the end of this year. I'm not going to hold my breath for that, but Tesla is clearly very, very serious about the Cybercab. And by the way, also great to hear an update on that Tesla semi-factory up at Giga Nevada as well. I'm just glad to hear that everything seems to be proceeding on schedule for that. And as I've said a number of times on this podcast, I can't wait to start seeing them on the roads. I still have never seen one out in the wild, only at Tesla events or museums. Next in the shareholder letter, under artificial intelligence, software, and hardware, Tesla says, in Q4, we completed the deployment of Cortex, a 50,000 H100 training cluster at Gigafactory Texas. Cortex helped enable V13 of FSD Supervised, which boasts major improvements in safety and comfort thanks to 4.2 times increase in data, higher resolution video inputs, a 2x reduction in photon to control latency, and redesigned controller, among other enhancements. FSD Supervised can now start from park and perform unpark, reverse, and park capabilities. In Q4, Tesla vehicles using autopilot technology drove 5.94 million miles between accidents, the best Q4 ever, compared to the US average of 0.7 million miles, or 700,000 miles, versus, again, Tesla's almost 6 million. Progress on Optimus hardware and software continued in Q4, including the latest generation hand, plus robust locomotion and training on additional tasks ahead of planned pilot production in 2025, end quote. So what might jump out at you there is that very last bit, pilot production of Optimus this year? Yes, that sounds cool. I mean, we know that Tesla is going to be its own first customer on that, but nevertheless, that is significant progress and also confidence in that progress, because again, like with the bullish stance that Tesla has on FSD unsupervised coming along via the Cybercab and potentially our own cars before that, there's a lot going on at Tesla that hinges on that FSD software getting to where it needs to be to make all these other big projects happen. So stay tuned on all of that. Under the battery, powertrain, and manufacturing section of the shareholder letter, Tesla says, quote, "Our in-house 4680 cell hit a production rate exceeding 2,500 Cybertrucks per week," end quote. Which I wanted to mention because I think we can reasonably take that to mean that they are building close to that many Cybertrucks per week. I mean, I'm sure the number of trucks worth of cells exceeds the actual number of trucks being made each week, but I doubt it's that big of a gap between those two figures. Meaning, if Tesla's doing over 2,500 Cybertrucks worth of 4680 cells per week, I doubt they're only producing, say, 1,800 trucks per week. I think the number of actual trucks being made on a weekly basis has got to be fairly close to 2,500 per week, which is excellent progress. Next, what would normally be the end of the shareholder letter, I do want to read you that, but then there's one more thing. So it's the Outlook page that's typically the conclusion of the shareholder letter. And under volume, Tesla says, "With the advancements in vehicle autonomy and the introduction of new products, we expect the vehicle business to return to growth in 2025. Of course, they were only down 1% year over year, but I digress. The rate of growth will depend on a variety of factors, including the rate of acceleration of our autonomy efforts, just what I was saying a minute ago, production ramp at our factories, and the broader macroeconomic environment. We expect energy storage deployments to grow at least 50% year over year in 2025. For the cash outlook, Tesla says what they usually say: we have sufficient liquidity to fund our product roadmap, long-term capacity expansion plans, and other expenses. Furthermore, we will manage the business such that we maintain a strong balance sheet during this uncertain period. In the profit outlook, Tesla says, while we continue to execute on innovations to reduce the cost of manufacturing and operations, over time, we expect our hardware-related profits to be accompanied by an acceleration of AI, software, and fleet-based profits. And finally, under the product outlook, one of my favorite sections of the shareholder deck each quarter, Tesla says, plans for new vehicles, including more affordable models, remain on track for start of production in the first half of 2025. These vehicles will utilize aspects of the next generation platform, as well as aspects of our current platforms, and will be produced on the same manufacturing lines as our current vehicle lineup. This approach will result in achieving less cost reduction than previously expected, but enables us to prudently grow our vehicle volumes in a more CapEx-efficient manner during uncertain times. This should help us fully utilize our current expected maximum capacity of close to 3 million vehicles, enabling more than 60% growth over 2024 production before investing in new manufacturing lines. And finally, our purpose-built robotaxi product, Cybercab, will continue to pursue a revolutionary unboxed manufacturing strategy and is scheduled for volume production starting in 2026. Well, I am glad that despite the bullishness on their progress on autonomy, which again, I absolutely applaud, they do ground themselves there with that realistic note that I called out about their rate of growth depending in no small part on how quickly FSD advances. And then once again, we are reminded another quarter as this gets closer and closer and closer that the Model 2.5s are on the way very soon, i.e. in the next 5 months, which probably means, again, I don't think this is an unreasonable prediction or a thing to extrapolate from here. It probably means that the reveal of these new vehicles is no more than about 90 days away. That would be my guess. If you ask me, if I would set the over-under at 90 days, and I would bet the under. All right, on that note, this week's Patreon poll was about the Model 2.5s, and specifically, when you think they'll start delivering. So the poll question was simply, when do you think Tesla will deliver the first Model 2.5 vehicles? So not produce, not production, but actual deliveries. Now I know Tesla in the shareholder letter there, they said production in the first half of 2025. I'm asking for deliveries, delivery predictions in this poll, and almost a dead even split between the top two vote getters here. 30% of poll respondents thought it would be in Q3 of this year, meaning July, August, or September. And 29% of you said you thought it would be in Q4, meaning October, November, December. 17% thought it would slip to Q1 of 2026, or roughly 1 year from now, and then trails off pretty far. 12% of you thought it would be way later. 12% of you said the second half of 2026 or later. Just 6% of you thought that Tesla would deliver any Model 2.5s in Q2 of 2025, meaning they would have any deliveries by June 30th. And I think Tesla history says, yeah, I can understand why not a lot of people voted for that. I'm not sure what I would have chosen if I were voting in this. Probably I would have gone in that Q3 2025 group. Just because, as I've said, history does say that Tesla is almost always, quote unquote, late with their vehicle deliveries, vehicle production, except with the simpler, more affordable cars that didn't try to do something crazy. So the S was, of course, the beginning, and everything about it was crazy at the time. The X was insane by the CEO's own admission. Building the Model X was a nutty thing to do, but it's an amazing vehicle. It's arguably one of the most unique vehicles ever made, and certainly one of the most unique vehicles on the road. And you could say the same thing about the Cybertruck, which is laced with next generation technology, and it is arguably the most unique vehicle on the roads today. So when Tesla gets crazy, it tends to take longer, which makes sense, right? When they keep it simple, they've been on time, or dare I say, even early. And everything about the Model 2.5s suggests that they are going to keep it simple. So we'll see. We can come back to this poll once production and deliveries actually do start in some number of months on the Model 2.5s. Now, speaking of the Cybertruck, there was one more chart, as I teased a moment ago, at the end of the shareholder letter that I found very interesting. And it seems that Tesla plans to use a lot of the technologies that debuted in the Cybertruck on future vehicles, and I'm going to run through that list with you now. One of which we already knew about, and that's the new Roadster. That, if it ever gets built, which is a big if, we know is going to get steer-by-wire. Which, if that ever happens, a supercar with steer-by-wire where there's no hand-over-hand at all, and that's going to be incredible to drive. Anyway, steer-by-wire Roadster, we know that. And then, other technologies that Tesla lists and then puts a little check mark next to in the will be used in future vehicles column, it stands to reason that the 48-volt low voltage and 800-volt high voltage architecture will definitely also go into the Roadster, but also those are checked so that those are going into future cars. And then the high-speed ether loop communication tech within the car, also checked. That's also going to be used in future vehicles. Now, the one that I think those of you listening to this are going to care about more than any of the others is PowerShare. And yes, that box is checked. Tesla says that PowerShare will be coming to future vehicles. They also confirm that adaptive air suspension will come to some future. It's not necessarily all of them, to clarify, but at least one future vehicle will get adaptive air suspension. Rear wheel steering is going to get used again. That box was checked, and that'll probably be equipped on any larger vehicle that Tesla makes from here on out, right? Whether it's like a larger van or maybe even a minivan, potentially. There's a number. If they were to make another truck, like either a vanilla pickup truck or just a smaller pickup truck, that'll probably get steer-by-wire. Excuse me, not steer-by-wire. My apologies. Rear wheel steering. And then the other boxes on the list that were checked for future vehicle use are gigacastings, of course. Tesla's pioneered those in the industry. They're not going to stop there. And then integrated audio with body structure is checked, which means that they're utilizing a technique that the Cybertruck uses of taking advantage of recessed spots within the body structure, the gigacasted body structure, to enhance the subwoofer audio. That's what that's saying. Now, those are all interesting, but to me, what's more interesting is the two Cybertruck technologies that are not checked in that use in future vehicles column. And those two technologies are stainless steel exoskeleton and air bending manufacturing process. Of course, the latter of which making perfect sense because you don't need the air bending manufacturing process unless you're working with the HFS again, right? So stainless steel not being planned for future use, to me, is pretty huge news because it effectively confirms something that, frankly, surprises me. And that is that Tesla has no plans to build any more stainless steel vehicles, which means the Cybertruck will be, in that regard, a one-off, much like the DeLorean proved to be, thus forever linking them together in one strange way in history. But on a more serious note, because, of course, you know, I can't help but smile whenever I can bring the DeLorean into this podcast in a way that makes sense. And right there, it makes sense. But seriously, I am a bit bummed out by this. And I'm pretty shocked, too, because it seemed as though in the early days, after the Cybertruck reveal, as Tesla would start to talk it up, it seemed like not painting cars and simultaneously also having super tough cars would be a thing that Tesla would want to take more advantage of as they continue to scale up towards that ultimate goal of making 20 million cars per year. I'm quite certain there is record of me on this podcast hypothesizing that the Cybercab was going to be stainless steel, unpainted, because they were going to be pumping them out in high volume, and it would make sense to just not have to run them through a paint shop and have them be super tough because they're going to get abused in a taxi situation. But that's not the way Tesla went, and it would seem that they don't plan to go that way for any future vehicle, and that surprised me. I'll get to the earnings call next, but first I want to mention once again the Climate Exchange raffle. It's coming up. Time is running out to enter Climate Exchange's 9th EV raffle. Are you dreaming about driving home a brand new Model Y Juniper? Well, what if I told you that your dream is possible if you enter Climate Exchange's 9th EV raffle? Their grand prize winner can choose from over 60 EVs on the market, including any Tesla, configured however you want. And even better, they also pay all of the fees and taxes on the car, meaning you get your dream car with zero out-of-pocket cost. Even better, Climate Exchange is giving away 2 additional cash prizes: $12,500 for their second place winner and $7,500 for their third place winner. Proceeds benefit a small nonprofit that's doing really important work for our planet to help states pass climate policies. So no matter what, your ticket is supporting an important cause. Ticket sales end in under a month on February 26th, so now is the time to enter Climate Exchange's EV raffle. Tickets are selling fast. Less than 2,000 of the 5,000 tickets remain, so get yours before they sell out. Go to carbonraffle.org/RTL to get your tickets, or click on the link in the episode description. That's carbonraffle.org/RTL. And of course, my friends at Accelerate Auto continue to offer you a discount on an XCare extended warranty policy. If you want to go with Tesla's fixed 2-year, 25,000-mile extended warranty coverage plan, cool, all good. But I would urge you to consider XCare because it covers everything Tesla's does and has a couple of additional perks like rental reimbursement, should you need it, and trip interruption coverage. Plus, the XCare policy is far more flexible and customizable. You can go 3 years, 5 years, up to 10 years, and you can go up to 125,000 additional miles after your factory warranty is up, or anywhere in between. It's all up to you. So check out their website and maybe just configure one up, see what it looks like, see if it works for your budget and what you're looking for on a warranty for your car, that extended warranty. Go to accelerateauto.com/xcare, and don't forget to use the discount code LIGHTNING for $100 off your purchase. That's XCELERATEAUTO.com/XCARE. Discount code LIGHTNING for $100 off your policy purchase. Let's go through the earnings call now. I have 9 clips to play for you. As always, I listen to the whole call and do my best to distill it down to the most important or most interesting things and share that all with you here along with my analysis. I will start with the opening remarks from Tesla's CEO, and he set a new record on this one, and it wasn't close. He shattered his own record for longest earnings call opening statement ever. This is over 18 minutes long, but I do want to play you the whole thing because remember what I talked about earlier with the shareholder letter about the company seeming bullish? Well, you're about to hear a lot more of that, and I think it's very energizing as a Tesla fan to hear about how bullish and optimistic everybody at the company is about the trajectory of where Tesla's going. So grab a beverage, settle in, and enjoy this 18-plus minute opening statement.
So in summary, in Q4, we set a record and delivered vehicles at an annualized rate of nearly 2 million a year. So congratulations to the Tesla team on excellent work achieving record production and deliveries. Model Y was the best-selling vehicle of any kind for 2024. That's worth noting. Not just the best electric vehicle, the best vehicle of any kind on Earth. Number one was Model Y. We're staying focused on maximizing volumes and obviously doubling down, or I don't know what. Really, I was going to say doubling down on autonomy, but really it's like autonomy is like 10xing things, frankly. Doubling is not even enough. We made many critical investments in 2024 in manufacturing, AI, and robotics that will bear immense fruit in the future. Immense. Like it's, in fact, to such a scale that it is difficult to comprehend. And I've said this before, and I'll stand by it. I see a path. I'm not saying it's an easy path, but I see a path to Tesla being the most valuable company in the world by far. Not even close. Like maybe several times more than. I mean, there is a path where Tesla is worth more than the next top 5 companies combined. There's a path to that. I mean, I think it's like an incredibly, it's like a difficult path, but it is an achievable path. And that is overwhelmingly due to autonomous vehicles and autonomous humanoid robots. So our focus is actually building towards that. And that's what we're laying the ground. We laid the groundwork for that in 2024. We'll continue to lay the groundwork for that in 2025. In fact, more than lay the groundwork, actually, so be building the structure. We're building the manufacturing lines, I'd like setting up for what I think will be an epic 2026 and a ridiculous 27 and 28. Ridiculously good. That is my prediction. As yet, very few people understand the value of full self-driving and our ability to monetize the fleet. I've some of these things I've said for quite a long time, and I know people have said, well, Elon's the boy who cried wolf like several times, but I'm telling you, there's a damn wolf this time, and you can drive it. In fact, it can drive you. It's a self-driving wolf. For a lot of people, they're like their experience of Tesla autonomy is like if it's even a year old, if it's even 2 years old, it's like meeting someone when they're like a toddler and thinking that they're going to be a toddler forever. But obviously not going to be a toddler forever. They grow up. But if their last experience was like, oh, FSD was a toddler, it's like, well, it's grown up now. Have you seen it? It's like walks and talks. That's really what we've got. And it's difficult for people to understand this because human intuition is linear, as opposed to what we're seeing is exponential progress. So that's why my number one recommendation for anyone who doubts is simply try it. Have you tried it? When's the last time you tried it? And the only people who are skeptical are those who have not tried it. So, a passenger car typically has only about 10 hours of utility per week out of 168. A very small percentage. Once that car is autonomous, my rough estimate is that it is in use for at least a third of the hours of the week. So call it 50, maybe 55 hours of the week. And it can be used for both cargo delivery and people delivery. So even, let's say, people are asleep, but you can deliver packages in the middle of the night or resupply restaurants or whatever the case may be, whatever people need at all hours of the day or night. That same asset, the thing that is these things that already exist with no incremental cost change, just a software update, now have 5 times or more the utility than they currently have. I think this will be the largest asset value increase in human history. Maybe there's something bigger, but I just don't know what it is. And so people who look in the rearview mirror are looking for past precedent, except I don't think there is one. So, but you know, but like the reality of autonomy is upon us. And I repeat my advice: try driving the car, or let it drive you. So now it works very well in the US, but of course it will over time work just as well everywhere else. So we're working hard to grow our annual volumes. Our constraint this year, our current constraint is battery packs this year, but we're working on addressing that constraint. And I think we will make progress on addressing that constraint. And then things are really going to go ballistic next year, and really ballistic in 27 and 28. So, So a bit more on full self-driving. Our Q4 vehicle safety report shows continued year-over-year improvement in safety for vehicles. So the safety numbers, if somebody has supervised full self-driving turned on or not, the safety differences are gigantic. And people have seen the immense improvement with version 13 and with incremental versions in version 13. And then version 14 is going to be yet another step beyond that is very significant. We launched the Cortex training cluster at Gigafactory Austin, which was a significant contributor to FSD advancement. And we continue to invest in training infrastructure at our Texas headquarters. So the training needs for Optimus humanoid robot are probably at least ultimately 10x what's needed for the car, at least to get to the full range of useful roles. You can say, like, how many different roles are there for a humanoid robot versus a car? A humanoid robot has probably 1,000 times more uses and more complex things than in a car. That doesn't mean the training scales by 1,000, but it's probably 10x. Now you can do this progressively, so it doesn't mean like Tesla's going to spend like $500 billion in training compute, because we will obviously train Optimus to do enough tasks to match the output of Optimus robots. But obviously the cost of training is dropping dramatically with time. So, but it is like it's one of those things where I think long-term Optimus has the potential to be north of $10 trillion in revenue. Like it's really bananas. So then you can obviously afford a lot of training compute in that situation. In fact, even $500 billion of training compute in that situation would be quite a good deal. Yeah. The future is going to be incredibly different from the past, that's for sure. We live at this unbelievable inflection point in human history. So, yeah. So, the proof is in the pudding. So we're going to be launching unsupervised full self-driving as a paid service in Austin in June. So, I've talked with the team. We feel confident in being able to do an initial launch of unsupervised, no one in the car, full self-driving in Austin in June. We already have Teslas operating autonomously unsupervised full self-driving at our factory in Fremont, and we'll soon be doing that at our factory in Texas. So thousands of cars every day are driving with no one in them at our Fremont factory in California. They will soon be doing that in Austin. and then elsewhere in the world, the rest of our factories, which is pretty cool. And the cars aren't just driving to exactly the same spot, because obviously it all want to collide at the same spot. The cars are actually programmed with what lane they need to park into to be picked up for delivery. So they drive from the factory end of line to their destination parking spot, to be picked up for delivery to customers. And they're doing this reliably every day, thousands of times a day. It's pretty cool. Like I said, the Teslas will be in the wild with no one in them in June in Austin. So what I'm saying is, this is not some far off mythical situation. It's literally, 5 months away type of thing. While we're putting our toe in the water gently at first, just to make sure everything's cool, our solution is a generalized AI solution. It does not require high precision maps of a locality. So we just want to be cautious. It's not that it doesn't work beyond Austin. In fact, it does. We just want to put a toe in the water, make sure everything is okay, then put a few more toes in the water, then put a foot in the water, with safety of the general public and those in the car as our top priority. With regard to Optimus, obviously I'm making these revenue predictions that sound absolutely insane. I realize that, but they are. I think they will prove to be accurate. Now with Optimus, there's a lot of uncertainty on the exact timing, because it's not like a train arriving at the station for Optimus. We are designing the train and the station and in real time while also building the tracks. and so they're like, why didn't the train arrive exactly at 12:05? I'm like, we're literally designing the train and the tracks in the station in real time so you're like, how can we predict this thing with absolute precision? It's impossible. The normal internal plan calls for roughly 10,000 Optimus robots to be built this year. Will we succeed in building 10,000 exactly by the end of December this year? Probably not. But will we succeed in making several thousand? Yes, I think we will. Will those several thousand Optimus robots be doing useful things by the end of the year? Yes, I'm confident they will do useful things. The Optimus in use at the Tesla factories, production design 1, will inform what we change for production design 2, which we expect to launch next year. And our goal is to ramp Optimus production faster than maybe anything's ever been ramped, meaning like aspirationally an order of magnitude ramp per year. Now, if we aspire to an order of magnitude ramp per year, perhaps we only end up with a half order of magnitude per year. But that's the kind of growth that we're talking about. It doesn't take very many years before we're making 100 million of these things a year. If you go up by, let's say, a factor, by 5x per year.
It's insane.
Insane. Not 50%, 500%. So, these are big growth numbers. But we do need to. This is an entirely new supply chain. It is entirely new technology. There's nothing off the shelf to use. We tried desperately with Optimus to use any existing motors, any actuators, sensors. Nothing worked for a humanoid robot at any price. We had to design everything from physics first principles to work for a humanoid robot, and with the most sophisticated hand that has ever been made before, by far. Right, Optimus will be able to like play the piano, and be able to thread a needle. I mean, this is the level of precision no one has been able to achieve, and so it's really something special. So. Yeah. So, and my prediction long term is that Optimus will be overwhelmingly the value of the company. Regarding energy, back to Earth. Earth to Elon. Can you come back here for a minute? Okay, back to Earth. Energy storage is a big deal, and will become. It's already super important. Will become incredibly important in the future. And it is something that enables far greater energy output to the grid than is currently possible, because the grids are the vast majority of the grid has no energy storage capability, so they have to design the power plants for very high peaks, and assuming that there's no energy storage. Once you have grid energy storage and home-based energy storage, the actual total energy output per year of the grid is dramatically greater than people think. Maybe it's at least double. This will drive the demand of stationary battery packs, and especially the grid scale ones, to insane, basically as much demand as we could possibly make. We have our second factory, which is in Shanghai, that's starting operation, and we're building a third factory. So we're trying to ramp output of the stationary battery storage as quickly as possible. Now, there is a challenge here where we have to be careful that we're not robbing from one pocket to take to another pocket, because for a given gigawatt hours per year of cell output, we have to say, does it go into stationary applications or mobile applications? We can't go into both. So we have to make that trade-off. Yeah. But overall, the demand for total gigawatt hours of batteries, whether mobile or stationary, that will grow in a very, very big way over time. So in conclusion, 2025 really is a pivotal year for Tesla. And when people look back on 2025 and the launch of unsupervised full self-driving, true real-world AI that actually works, I think they may regard it as the biggest year in Tesla history, maybe even bigger than our first car, the Roadster, or the Model S, or the Model 3, or Model Y. In fact, I think it probably will be viewed 25 as maybe the most important year in Tesla's history. There is no company in the world that is as good at real-world AI as Tesla. I don't even know who's in second place. Like, you say, who's in second place for real-world AI? I would need a very big telescope to see them. That's how far behind they are.
There's obviously a lot to go through there, so let me speak to the 5 things that jumped out at me. Number 1, as I alluded to heading into that, I wanted to comment on his overall mood here. And that, again, is a very, very optimistic mood. I mean, we've heard him be very exhausted on these calls. We've heard him even be frustrated on these calls in the past. Most of the time, of course, he's fine. But here, he seemed exceptionally optimistic about Tesla. Another word that I've already used, and I'll use it again, would be bullish. As I talked about when I was going through the shareholder letter earlier, I mean, you heard him talk about how pivotal a year this would be, but also that next year, and especially 2027 and 2028, would be bonkers years for Tesla. 2028, by the way, will mark the 20th anniversary of the production and delivery of Tesla's first ever car, which of course was the original Roadster. So it'll just be, when we do get there in another 3 years, it'll be wild to see how far Tesla's come once that milestone hits. I'll say it sure would be nice to celebrate that 20th anniversary of the production and delivery of their first car with the production and delivery of the new Roadster. But again, I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. Point number 2 I wanted to make here. If you didn't see it on social media this week, and yes, there is a video that you can watch, Elon mentioned it here, and that is that the cars in Fremont are now autonomously driving themselves off of the end of the production line over to the outbound lot, which is not only incredibly cool, it's also one step towards something that Elon said a couple times several years ago on earnings calls, which is that your new car would eventually deliver itself to you. Well, Tesla's now achieved the first leg of that delivery journey. And if you're thinking, wait a minute, when I get a new Tesla, it takes anywhere from 5 to 25 or so miles to calibrate the cameras. How can they be driving themselves straight off the production line and safely piloting themselves to the outbound lot? And that is a valid question. Someone asked that on X this week, and Tesla's AI boss, Ashok Eluswamy, responded saying, quote, "Calibration is now done automatically as the vehicle moves through the production line," end quote. So there you go. They've thought about it, and they've addressed it, and it's awesome. That is super, super cool. Point number 3 I wanted to make out of this opening statement is about full self-driving unsupervised being due to launch in Austin in June. That's amazing. That is awesome. If you stop and listen, just hang on, listen. That sound you hear is every Tesla YouTuber frantically booking a flight to Austin for the beginning of June in the hopes that it'll actually drop in the middle of June so that they can go down there, try it out, make a video, and try to be first on YouTube uploading that video. And a question was asked by an analyst later in the call, by the way, about whether or not you could drive down to Austin yourself and use your own car to do this. Like, could you bring your car to Austin and be inside that geo-fenced area and take advantage of unsupervised FSD? And the answer is no. At first, Tesla's going to be using its own fleet, which certainly makes sense. It was a good question, I'll say. It was a very fair and valid question, but it does make sense that the answer to it is no for now, because, you want to let any fender benders or any other potential mishaps, you want those to happen to company cars rather than your own personal Tesla. I will say, for my part, I will probably not be flying to Austin to try it, but once it comes here to my neck of the woods, and there's every reason to think that the San Francisco Bay Area, perhaps even if it's quote-unquote only, air quote, only, Palo Alto specifically at first, Palo Alto is probably going to be the next one after Austin, since most of Tesla's engineering team lives here, and they work in Palo Alto. So I will definitely drive down to Palo Alto to give it a whirl once it is operational. My 4th point here is that finally, the last piece of that opening statement, Optimus. So Optimus is the thing that Elon is clearly all in on. Like, you could just hear it in not only his tone, but just his words, just the degree to which he talked about Optimus. And I'll say it's not that I don't believe him that Optimus is going to be that big of a deal. It's that I readily admit that I don't have any pre-existing framework to be able to see a path to what he's predicting. And again, I'm admitting my ignorance in that regard. That is why he has been as successful building all these companies as he has been, because he can see this stuff. And then he inspires teams and builds teams and inspires other leaders at the companies to get this stuff done. I am just a dummy who has trouble seeing this Optimus thing go the way he sees it. But I'm not saying I doubt him. I don't doubt his ambition or Tesla's ambition with Optimus at all. But I will admit it is going to need to be a thing that I see in real life before I can quite get as excited and optimistic about it as he is. But him being excited about it only makes it more likely that it'll happen, right? Because if you look at the projects that he's been excited about in the past, Cybertruck, everybody said Cybertruck would never meaning everybody outside of Tesla circles, right? A lot of the general public doubted that Cybertruck would ever be a real thing that people could buy. But it was something that Elon was really excited about, and it happened. And well, guess what? So is Optimus, so is FSD. It is all going to happen. Sorry, I did have the fifth point I wanted to touch on, and it's just a random thought. I know this is only the opening statement, but even though it got a couple of mentions in the shareholder letter, there wasn't meaning specifically that last bit about Cybertruck technologies being used in future vehicles. On the earnings call, there was not a single mention of Cybertruck, which might be the first time that that's happened in literal years. Long, long time since we've had an earnings call with no mention whatsoever of the Cybertruck. Okay, as I said, I've got 9 clips total, so none of them are even close to as long as that one was. 8 more clips. We move now to the most upvoted retail shareholder questions, starting with one about whether or not full self-driving unsupervised is still on track for release this year. Now, we already heard the answer to that, but we were given a bit more detail in that answer. Here you go.
Yeah, I'm confident that we will release unsupervised FSD in California this year as well. In fact, I think we will most likely release unsupervised FSD in many regions of the country, of the US, by the end of this year. Like I said, we're just putting a toe in the water, then a few toes, then a foot, then leg, then make sure everything's cool. We're looking for a safety level that is significantly above the average human driver. So it's not anywhere like much safer, not like a little bit safer than human, way safer than human. So the standard has to be very high, because the moment there's any kind of accident with an autonomous car, this immediately gets worldwide headlines, even though about 40,000 people die every year in car accidents in the US. And most of them don't even get a mention anywhere. But if somebody scrapes a shin with an autonomous car, it's headline news.
We want to avoid that.
Yeah. So it's really the only thing holding us back is an excess of caution. But people can certainly get a feel for how well the car would perform as unsupervised FSD by simply allowing a car to drive you around your city and see how many times did you have to intervene, not where you wanted to intervene or were a little concerned, but how many times did you have to intervene for definite safety reasons. And you will find that is currently very rare, and over time, almost never.
I have to agree. I think I mentioned this on the podcast last fall, because that was when I watched a 30-minute interview on YouTube between the stand-up comedian Hassan Minhaj, who I think is super funny. His newest one on Netflix is really good, and the then Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. Pete talked about this exact same quandary, if you will, meaning any mistake by autonomous driving is just going to get raked over the coals in the public eye repeatedly. It's just going to be just an absolute nightmare in terms of the FUD that will spread out, even if the net good of autonomy is saving many, many more lives than an autonomous mistake. So if you think that the FUD pieces out there have been bad with FSD beta, just wait until FSD unsupervised goes live, then it's going to hit a whole nother level. All right, next up, another question about whether or not other automakers have approached Tesla about licensing FSD, which, by the way, I think is a good question. I don't mean to say that like it's dismissive. No, I think it is a good question to keep asking the Tesla executives. And the thing about this time is we didn't get the same old answer. Take a listen to this.
Yes. What we're seeing is, at this point, significant interest from a number of major car companies about licensing Tesla full self-driving technology. What we've generally said is the best way to know what to do is take one of our cars apart, and then you can see where the placement of the cameras are, what the thermal needs are of the Tesla AI inference computer. That's better than us, sending some CAD drawings. And then we're only going to entertain situations where the volume would be very high. Otherwise, it's just not worth the complexity. And we will not burden our engineering team with laborious discussions with other engineering teams until we obviously have unsupervised full self-driving working throughout the United States. I think the interest level from other manufacturers to license FSD will be extremely high once it is obvious that unless you have FSD, you're dead.
Well, I can't argue with any of that. I mean, with all due respect to, say, Rivian and Lucid, the other two major startup EV-only automakers who are definitely helping to advance the transition to EVs, I can see how it wouldn't make sense for Tesla to allocate their resources to helping either one of them, for example, implement the Tesla FSD system, no matter how big a check they wrote for the privilege of licensing the tech. And so if we take this answer and combine it with the previous answer that had been given on another recent earnings call, maybe even the last one, it definitely narrows the list down. So Ford, we know they have their own thing, Blue Cruise, but it's also clear at this point that their CEO, Jim Farley, is open-minded enough to go with FSD and throw out their in-house system if he thinks it's what's best for the present and future of his company. However, I would say this, what about GM? The reason that I bring up GM is because not only were they the second big automaker to adopt NACS right after Ford, but they also recently abandoned their robotaxi initiative, which was called Cruise. They pulled the plug on it. Now they still have Super Cruise, a consumer version driver assistance software in some of their cars. But to me, I think them giving up on their robotaxi initiative definitely signals that they would be open to licensing FSD. Are there any other obvious candidates out there that I'm missing after you heard that response? Feel free to write in, call in, whatever you want to do. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this one. All right, next up, as Byte Club spins up right to my left, if any of that's coming through on the mic, these two puppies have decided it is playtime. Next up, another question that we've heard asked before about when Optimus might go on the market and at what price.
Well, it may for this year we expect to just close the loop with Optimus being used internally at Tesla, because we obviously can easily use several thousand humanoid robots at Tesla for like the most boring, annoying tasks in the factory, like the tasks nobody wants to do, where we have to beg people to do this task, and then it's like the robot's totally happy to do the boring, dangerous, repetitive task that no humans want to do, and that's also actually some of the easiest use cases for us to have Optimus do things like load the hopper for say in Bodyline, if you're transporting pieces of sheet metal to the robot, which is already robot, the robot welding line for the body, and you just have to nonstop take things out of out of a from one fixture to another fixture, and it's a very boring job. That's the kind of thing what Optimus could do.
The guy who runs around and dumps all the weld studs in the bins.
Yeah, there's a ton of boring jobs, tedious jobs, dangerous, slightly dangerous jobs that are perfect for Optimus. So we expect to use Optimus for those tasks at our factories, and that'll help us close the loop for improvement this year. It's really with the production version 2, which I think launches sometime next year. I'd like it to be the beginning of next year, but maybe it's more like the middle of next year. And we have to just with a production line that is designed for on the order of 10,000 units a month versus 1,000 units a month. So like when you design a unit when you design a production line for 1,000 units a month, it takes you a while to actually reach anywhere close to 1,000 units a month. When you design, and for any given production output, it takes you a while to actually reach its potential. But the current line that we're designing is for roughly 1,000 units a month of Optimus robots. The next line would be for 10,000 units a month. The line after that would be for 100,000 units a month. And I think probably with version 2, as a very rough guess, because there's so much uncertainty here, very rough guess that we start delivering Optimus robots to companies that are outside of Tesla in maybe the second half of next year, something like that. But like so, this is such an exponential ramp that it'll go from no one's receiving humanoid robots to these things like coming out like crazy.
So we can't build enough.
Well, we're always going to be in the we can't build enough situation. Demand will not be a problem, even at a high price. And then, as I said, like once we're at a steady state of above 1 million units a year, I think the production, I'm confident at 1 million units a year that the production cost of Optimus will be less than $20,000. If you compare the complexity of Optimus to the complexity of a car, so just the total mass and complexity of Optimus is much less than a car. So I would expect that at similar volumes to, say, the Model Y, which is over 1 million units a year, that you'd see Optimus be, I don't know, half the cost, or something like that. What the price of Optimus is a different matter. The price of Optimus will be set by the market demand.
Well, it's nice to get an update on the timeline and more specifics on the plans, i.e., version 1 will be for internal use, and version 2 will be sold to people other than Tesla. It seems like they're approaching it kind of like the Tesla Semi in that regard. Also, as previously mentioned, expect it to cost about as much as a small car, or maybe to put in Tesla-specific terms, a used Model 3. It does sound like we might not get a chance to own one for individual home use for a while, though, because if I heard that correctly, I believe he said they'd start delivering to companies in the second half of 2026, maybe. So I interpret that to mean that a home consumer version is even further out. But I guess I personally don't mind, as I can't afford a $25,000 home robot anyway. All right, next up, what is the update on the Tesla Semi factory and the production of that unique vehicle? Here is Tesla's Vice President of Engineering, Lars Moravi.
I can take that one. So we just closed up the Semi factory roof and walls last week in Reno. It's ahead of schedule, which is great with the weather. In Reno, you never know what's going to happen. But we're prepping for mechanical installation of all the equipment in the coming months. The first builds of the high-volume semi-design will come late this year in 2025 and begin ramping early in 2026. But as we've said before, the Semi is a TCO no-brainer. It's really similar to the Optimus. It's going to be, set by how much people pay, and then, it as a total cost of ownership, it's much, much cheaper than any other transportation you can have. So at that point, when we're at scale, it will meaningfully contribute to, Tesla's revenue. Well, I think it's difficult to say how much. Anything you want to add, Elon?
No, I mean, I do think that Tesla Semi, again, with autonomy, is going to be incredibly valuable. That we actually have a shortage of truck drivers in America. That's one of the limiting factors on transport. People are human, so they get tired, and sometimes, there's, I have a lot of respect for truck drivers because it's a tough job. But because it's a tough job, there's not that many people that want to do it, and there's actually fewer. I believe, if my understanding is correct, there are fewer people entering truck driving as a profession than are leaving it.
Yes.
So when you think, yeah, exactly. So when you consider, okay, there's more people leaving truck driving as a profession than entering it, well, we're going to have a real logistics problem as time goes by. So autonomy will be very important to meet that need. It'll I don't know. It's a several billion a year opportunity, which I don't know in this context, is that these days does several billion a year matter? I think it does. Not nothing. It's probably, it's probably like a 10 billion a year thing. Yeah, it's $1 billion a month at some point, probably. But it's all this is going to pale in comparison to Optimus. So, yeah, $1 billion a month it's a lot, but it's not. It's going to be like 1% of Optimus or something,
I honestly feel like people outside of the Teslaverse, if you will, are just completely sleeping on the Tesla Semi. And I would honestly, respectfully, include institutional analysts in that for the most part too. I mean, this thing is going to be huge once it goes into volume production and really starts hitting the roads en masse. And companies are going to start talking to each other about it. It's exactly the same as with the Tesla passenger vehicles. It's going to start out as a secret little club, but word will get around quickly, and before long, everybody is going to want a Tesla Semi. I guarantee you that's what's going to happen here as well, just like with the passenger cars. Okay, the next retail shareholder upvoted question is a follow-up to something that was mentioned on the last earnings call, and that is that we were previously told that the Hardware 3 cars would get upgraded to Hardware 4 if necessary to achieve full self-driving unsupervised. So the question is it necessary? Here is Tesla's AI lead, Ashok Aluswamy.
They're really asking the tough questions, aren't they?
I guess we haven't stopped working on Hardware 3 yet. We are still making software releases. We released the 12.6 release recently, which was like a baby V13. But it's a significant improvement compared to what they had previously. And people are still finding ways to distill larger models into smaller models. So we're not giving up on Hardware 3. We're still working on it. Just the releases will trail the Hardware 4 releases.
Great. Thanks, Ashok. Yeah. I think the honest answer is that we're going to have to upgrade people's Hardware 3 computer for those that have bought full self-driving, and that is the honest answer, and that's going to be painful and difficult, but we'll get it done. Now I'm kind of glad that not that many people bought the FSD package.
Well, there it is. Ashok says they're still working with Hardware 3, but Elon admits that not many people paid for FSD, which, of course, we all knew, because why else did they lower the price all the way back down to $8,000 after doubling it at one point in time? Now, as for this promised upgrade, it's certainly not a binding contract or anything here on an earnings call, but that's as close as you can get to one. So if, like me, you have a Hardware 3 car and you've purchased FSD outright, it sounds as though you will get upgraded to Hardware 4. We don't have a timeline yet, nor do we know exactly what this will entail, whether it's just the board or it's the board and cameras, etc. Now, what I recall reading from our white hat hacker friend Green the Only some time ago, when Hardware 4 was first coming out, is that unlike the hardware 2.5 to hardware 3 upgrade, hardware 3 and hardware 4, or AI 4 as Tesla's now been calling it, are not plug and play compatible. 2.5 to 3 was plug and play. 3 to 4, not. Thus, Tesla might have to design some sort of adapter to get AI4 to interface with AI3, or a custom board that puts the AI4 components on an AI3 card. I don't know. I'm not smart enough. I don't work in silicon and chips. But also, I'm wondering this too. Might it make more sense for Tesla to just skip AI4 with this promised retrofit for those that have paid for FSD and just go to AI5, since last we were told AI5 is due to start going into cars about the end of this year? Although I guess now that I'm thinking out loud through my own idea, the AI5 boards not only might cost Tesla more, but if they did that, then they'd have AI4 owners wanting a free upgrade to AI5, which would really compound the problem. So I suppose it will be AI4 is what the upgrade will be. One other question that I have to ask about this, and this is one that you may be wondering as well, what will the cutoff be? And by that I mean, if you have a hardware 3 car that you plan on keeping for a while, can you pay $8,000 for FSD right now, today, and get this upgrade whenever it rolls out? Or will there have been a cutoff for it? I mean, my common sense answer would be that there wouldn't be a line in the sand drawn here, and that anyone with a hardware 3 car who spent or spends the $8,000 on FSD at any point would get this promised upgrade. And I hope that's how it's going to be. Still, though, I have to say, and I always like to call it out when it happens, and I do think it happens more often than it doesn't, it is great to see Tesla do the right thing here, because this is the right thing to do. And from Ashok's answer, it sounds like they're struggling a bit I don't want to speak for them or project something that maybe is unfair, but it sounds like they are working hard to try and squeeze much more out of hardware 3, even if they very understandably haven't given up on it just yet. Okay, the next call comes from the institutional analyst questions. Now I've got, let's see, how many of these before we're done? 3 of these. And starting with one about, the question was about what KPIs, or key performance indicators if you're not familiar with the term, what KPIs would tell Tesla that they're on track for their big goals, or conversely, not on track? And the clip I'm going to play for you, I'm not sure that question really got answered here, but the answer given was nevertheless very interesting, in my opinion. So take a listen.
Well, I mean, I think the predictions that I'm making here are going to be pretty accurate. And it's worth noting, so sometimes people say, oh, Elon's always late. Well, actually, no, the problem is that the media reports on when I'm late, but never reports on when I'm early. So sure, I'm optimistic, but I'm not that optimistic. There are many cases in the past where we've been early, such as completion of the Shanghai factory, in fact, factory completion has generally been ahead of schedule, not behind. But I like I said, I'm very confident we'll have released unsupervised full self-driving, fully autonomous Teslas in Austin and several other cities in America by the end of this year. That's probably everywhere in America next year, everywhere in North America at least. I think in terms of next year, our constraint, I think, is likely to be just regulatory. Like Europe really has, for example, Europe is a layer cake of regulations and bureaucracy, which that really needs to be addressed. There's this joke like America innovates, Europe regulates. It's like, guys, there's too many refs on the field. For example, for us just to release supervised full self-driving in Europe, even though it works really well, we have to go through a mountain of paperwork with the Netherlands, which is our primary regulatory authority. Then the Netherlands presents this to the EU in, I think, May. And there's like this big EU country committee. We expect it to be approved at that time, but there's nothing we can do to make that may happen sooner. In fact, nobody seems to do. I guess all the countries would have to somehow vote in some way to have it happen sooner than May. Otherwise, it won't happen sooner than May. So then when is unsupervised FSD allowed in Europe? I'm like, May next year, maybe? I don't know. Well, I have to find out when the EU is meeting again. Sometimes it's a 12-month cadence, sometimes a 6-month cadence. Then in China, which is also a gigantic market, we do have some challenges because they won't currently allow us to transfer training video outside of China. And then the US government won't let us do training in China. So we're in a bit of a bind there. So like a bit of a quandary. So what we're solving that is by literally looking at videos of streets in China that are available on the internet to understand, and then feeding that into our video training so that publicly available video of street signs and traffic rules in China can be used for training, and then also putting it in we've got a very accurate simulator, and so it will train using sim for bus lanes in China. Like bus lanes in China, by the way, one of our the biggest challenges in making FSD work in China is the bus lanes are very complicated. And there's like literally like hours of the day that you're allowed to be there and not be there. And then if you accidentally go in that bus lane at the wrong time, you get an automatic ticket instantly. So it's kind of a big deal, bus lanes in China. So we have to put that into our simulator, train on that. The car has to know what time of day it is, read the sign. Anyway, we'll get this solved. But I think we'll have unsupervised FSD in almost every market this year, limited simply by regulatory issues, not technical capability. And then unsupervised FSD in the US this year, in many cities, but nationwide next year. And hopefully we have unsupervised FSD in most countries by the end of next year. That's my prediction with the best data that I have right now.
So the reason that I wanted to play that clip is we ended up getting a pretty good behind-the-curtain look at the regulatory challenges that Tesla is facing with FSD in global markets. I suspect those of you in Europe were particularly fascinated by that answer, even if the answer wasn't necessarily what you were wanting to hear. So thus it sounds like May is the absolute earliest that FSD supervised might be rolled out in Europe. Fingers crossed for all of my friends over there that it doesn't take too much longer past that. Speaking of FSD, a good question was asked about whether or not there will be an intermittent step between where we are now and FSD unsupervised, whereby we can be in the driver's seat but are allowed to take our eyes off the road. Here's the answer.
Yes. We need to be very confident that the probability of injury is low before we allow people to check their email and text messages. In fact, right now we're in this perverse situation, which you may have encountered yourself, where people will actually go to manual driving to check their text messages.
Yep.
So the computer doesn't yell at them, and then put it back on autonomous mode once they've checked the text messages, which is obviously less safe,
Significantly less safe.
significantly less safe, significantly less safe than just letting people check their text once in a while without the computer yelling at them.
Yeah,
But we just want to be cautious about that, the advent of that. We're in this sort of, neither here nor there, but just for, I mean, I think it's not for many months longer. But yeah, we're in this perverse situation where people will turn the car off autopilot so the computer doesn't yell at them, check their text messages while steering the car with their knee and not looking out the window.
and here, like Elon said, right? If you have any problems with the system, and when people are not looking, that is a dangerous thing, and that's what we're trying to avoid. It's the capability is getting there, but it's not fully there. That's why he was using the term of dipping our toe in the water, then getting comfortable, then keep going.
Anyway, it's not far off, but we want to prove to ourselves, prove to ourselves, and obviously prove to regulators that the car is unequivocally safer in autonomous mode than not. And we're not far off. So this is like low single-digit months.
To the safety aspect, we did publish our vehicle safety report today, and in Q4 was one crash for every 5.9 million miles driven, compared to a crash every 700,000 miles without autopilot.
Right. So we're getting to the point where it's an order of magnitude.
Yeah, it's like 8.5 tons safety.
Right.
So it's just about there. Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, low single-digit months sounds like 6 months or less to me for eyes off. Also, so we'll see if that actually happens. Also, I have never disengaged FSD to check a text. You can do it with the system on if you just put the phone up near the cabin-facing camera by the rearview mirror. But I could see how people would want to do it that way by disengaging, and how thus it creates quite the unintended scenario for Tesla. All right, the last clip I have for you is a question about Elon's position in the new government administration and what his view on the correct policy for the U.S. to be pushing EVs forward might be.
At this point, I think that sustainable transport is inevitable. I'm highly confident that all transport will be autonomous electric, including aircraft, and that it can't be stopped any more than one could have stopped the advent of the external combustion engine, the steam engine, or one could have stopped the advent of the internal combustion engine. Like even if you've been the biggest horse advocate on earth, you're like a horses are the way, not these newfangled automobiles. You can't stop the advent of the automobile. It's going to happen, and you can't stop the advent of electric cars. It's going to happen. The only thing holding back electric cars was range, and that is a solved problem.
Well, Elon is in government now, and I would say that was spoken like a true politician right there. I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse on this, but I do feel strongly about it. I just simply cannot agree with him here. I mean, I don't disagree with him that EVs are inevitable, but I also don't agree with that being a justification for being in support of the elimination of the $7,500 EV tax credit. The transition to EVs will absolutely be slowed down by getting rid of it. And this, after Tesla itself talked about affordability being a big key for customers in its own shareholder letter, as I went over a little while ago. So again, this is not a political statement. I hope you don't interpret it as such. I simply oppose the elimination of the Inflation Reduction Act's EV tax credit on the grounds of being someone who supports the EV movement and wants these cars to be more affordable for people in order to help convince them to make the jump from the gas-powered cars that they've known their whole life into the paradigm shift. We'd all agree it's a paradigm shift from a gas car to an EV, and that's that's tough. That is a scary thing for a lot of people, and I say that with all sincerity. So that's how I feel about it. You may disagree. That's okay. We can disagree. But I would personally love to see Elon fight to keep the tax credit rather than being okay with it going away. That is everything from this quarter's shareholder letter and earnings call, but I am not done with this podcast as of yet. I'm not going to do any Ride the Lightning phone calls. If you've been listening long enough, you probably already guessed that coming in, that these earnings call episodes tend to go pretty darn long. And so I will get back to your Ride the Lightning hotline calls next week. But in the meantime, if you've got a question, comment, or discussion topic, something you'd like to react to from something I said, something you heard on the earnings call, feel free to call in, and you've got a chance at being featured on an upcoming episode. There are two easy ways to call in. Either use your smartphone's built-in voice recording software, and you can record your question. Please try to keep it to 90 seconds or less so that I can get to as many callers each week as possible. And then just email that file to me at teslapodcast@gmail.com. Or you can take that same 90-second or less call and just call in and leave a message on the Ride the Lightning hotline. That toll-free number that you can dial anytime is 1-888-989-8752. That's 1-888-989-TSLA. The podcast is not quite over yet, though. I'll come back here in a second and tell you about what's going on with my new car, the Soul of Adventure. I'll give you your Tesla Pro Tip of the Week and more coming up next.
Hi, this is Franz von Holzhausen, and you're listening to Ride the Lightning with Ryan McCaffrey, the Tesla unofficial podcast.
Well, this week I brought my new car, in for two things to the service center. One was a stain on the passenger side A-pillar headliner. It looked like it was kind of red tinged a bit, like it was watered down paint or something dripping down the side of it. And then it was also on the ceiling headliner near the same spot on the passenger side. And I thought that Tesla, I pointed it out to my delivery advisor, who said, yep, just put in a ticket and they'll just probably replace that. And they ended up able to clean it and completely get rid of it without replacing it, which is even better because then they didn't have to go ripping my interior apart. So I am grateful for that. Now, the second thing I went in for was my headlights. I don't know if I mentioned this on last week's podcast, but I had been out at night in it, and it was pretty chilly out, and there was condensation built up on the inside corners of the headlights in a way that clearly should not happen. So I pointed that out when I dropped the car off, and they said, well, did the condensation go away after a little while? I said, yeah. They said, well, then that's considered normal. We'll only replace them if the condensation doesn't go away, if it just stays in there. So that I wasn't super thrilled about, but all right. I mean, I do have PPF on the headlights, so I would have had to get them redone if I had them replaced. So we'll see if I notice any other condensation down the road, and if I do, how long it hangs around. So we'll see on that one, but very happy with the outcome overall on my service center visit this week. One thing I'm not happy about, though, I mean, that's maybe too strong a way to put it. There's a wonderful feature that Tesla has implemented that those of you in multi-Tesla households probably use, and that's the cloud profiles. So it'll take all your settings from one of your Teslas to another. And the problem for me is it's not doing it accurately. So if I go from one Model 3 to the other, it's particularly, so the new one is fine, which is good because that's my primary car. The 2018 is now my wife's car, but I have been driving it from time to time for just various reasons. Number one, it's parked outside, so it's just easier to jump in and go if I have some quick little thing I got to go do. But when I get in the old one, it sets the seat way back, and it doesn't turn on my Live One music, which is what I usually have going. It brings up FM radio every time, and so it's it's a total first world problem, but it's annoying. It's that thing where if the feature doesn't work proper, like the feature on paper is amazing, but if it doesn't work properly, it's annoying. So does anybody else out there have this issue where in one or more of your Teslas in a multi-Tesla household, the cloud profile doesn't quite sync properly? Please email me, teslapodcast@gmail.com, if you'd like to share your experience, and especially if you have some sort of solution to this problem. What I've been doing is when I jump in the old one, I have a local profile that has everything correct. And so when I get in, I just hit that right away. And so I manually tap that. So again, not a big deal, but I sure would like the cloud thing to just work as it's seemingly designed, seemingly supposed to work. Alrighty, time for your Tesla pro tip of the week. It comes from Scott in Rochester.
Hey Ryan, Scott from Rochester, New York with the pro tip of the week. This one's more of a physical tip. A couple years ago when I had my Tesla wall connectors installed, one of the things I noticed that the cables that were dragging on the ground were getting a bit scratched and worn, especially since I have epoxy flooring with some sand in it for grip. Also here in Rochester, we have a lot of road salt in the winter, and that was melting off and pooling on the cables that were on the ground behind the car. So what I did was I cut little pieces of 1/2-inch foam pipe insulation that you can get from a hardware store. And I took these chunks and I zip tied them around the cable, spaced out every 1.5 feet or so where the cable touches the ground. This keeps the cable out just a little bit off the ground so it doesn't wear and scratch over time, and it'll last you a little bit longer. It's done pretty well for me the last couple of winters and years that I've had it. I included a photo of what this looks like as well, if that helps you visualize it better. Love the pod. Give some pets to Mina and Daisy for us, and shout out to my 11-year-old son, Lewis. He's a big fan of the pod and has been listening along with me weekly for years. Thanks, Ryan.
Scott, this is a fantastic pro tip / EV life hack. Thank you very much. I will happily pass along pets on your behalf to both Daisy and Mina, who are both sleeping next to me at the moment. And a big hello to Lewis, by the way. Lewis, buddy, I trust that you have quickly become best friends with your black Labrador puppy. Take good care of him, okay? He's going to take good care of you, as I'm sure he already is. If anybody else out there has a good Tesla pro tip of the week, please send it my way. And the way to do that is to send it in as if it is a regular Ride the Lightning hotline call. I gave you the 2 easy call-in methods just a few minutes ago, if not even sooner. Before I go, I want to mention some friends of Ride the Lightning that can hopefully be of use to you sooner or later. I will start with AbstractOcean.com. They've got so many great aftermarket EV and Tesla-specific accessories, from lighting kits, both for inside the car and outside the car, like the cool puddle lights with the TESLA, the Tesla word mark logo. Just so much good stuff. You've got to check it out. The drop-in cup holder stabilizer is nice. The 4th Gen tempered glass screen protectors, those are a popular seller as well. They're custom fit for the Tesla screen, so lots of good stuff. Check them out, abstractocean.com. And don't forget to use the coupon code RTLPodcast at checkout to get 15% off of your first order. That's RTL Podcast, all one word, no spaces. Next, the Snap Plate and the stronger Snap Plate Plus, available for S3, XY, and Cybertruck as well. This is the front license plate bracket that's nice and minimal, so it's just barely going to be visible in any way, shape, or form. It also can go onto your car safely and securely, but without leaving anything permanently behind, which the license plate frames that the car comes with, they do, because they use automotive tape. So don't use those. Use a snap plate if you either want or legally need to have a front plate on your car. Get yours at everyamp.com/RTL and use the coupon code RTL for a discount. Immaculate Reflections. I am so grateful for the detailing talents of Jeff at Immaculate Reflections, located here in the greater San Francisco Bay Area. If you're going to be in the greater San Francisco Bay Area with a car that you love, whether it's your Tesla or another fun, awesome thing you've got in your garage, I guarantee if you bring it to Immaculate Reflections, you're going to leave happy. whether you have paint correction done, which I did, whether you have paint protection film applied to some or all of the car, as I did, and or whether you have ceramic coating applied to the car, as I did, so that you don't have to wax the car for the next 3 to 5 plus years, because that's what ceramic coating is all about. It's a next generation version of car wax, basically. Anyway, reach out via the website, and that website is irdetailing.com. When you do reach out, mention that you're a Ride the Lightning listener, and any work that you have done, you will get the Ride the Lightning listener discount generously granted to you. So thank you to Jeff for continuing to offer that to the Ride the Lightning audience. I mentioned this towards the top of the show, but I'll mention it one more time here. I am on Patreon. That is the website, the platform through which creators sign up, and the people that support those creators, their audience, if you will, can choose to support them. So there are authors on Patreon, there are musicians on Patreon, poets, there are all sorts of folks, and there are podcasters like me. So this podcast has always been and will always be free, but if you see it in your heart to want to support me, I would be so grateful. I'd be humbled. It would mean a lot to me if you did choose to make a Patreon pledge. Those pledges start at just $5 a month, and then there's the $10 a month tier. Each tier adds more and more perks, basically ways that I say thank you for supporting me. Every tier gets ad-free episodes and early access to each week's episode. If you jump up to that $10 per month tier or higher, you'll get the ad-free, you'll get the early access, and you'll get all of those weekly lightning round mini episodes that I do on Patreon every week, as I told you about earlier. So check it out if you get a chance. Patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. The link is in the episode description, but it's Patreon. Patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. If you're not already following this podcast on one of the big podcast services, feel free to do so, because that way you'll just get a notification on your device whenever a new episode is available, which for me is always Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. So I'm on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, etc. So just search Ride the Lightning Tesla Podcast. You should see me pull right up, and just click that follow button. No problem. No cost to you. Just a nice little convenience if you'd like to do that. You can follow me on X and or on Instagram. I have the same username on both, and that username is DMC_Ryan. There's some fun pictures of, I mentioned it last week, I got the windows tinted on the new car, so I just like putting some fun Tesla stuff on that Instagram specifically. You can email me anytime about Tesla-related stuff. My email address is teslapodcast@gmail.com. And before I go, I want to mention the wonderful upper-tier Patreon backers who, among the perks that they get, is getting their names shouted out at the end of each week's show. I'll start with the Maximum Plaid backers. Big thanks to Jonathan Wales, Cameron Clark, Daniel Grummer, Seth Capello, Nick and Tony, the Galpin family, Ryan from New York City, Darren Nickel, Kaz Barnes, Brett Libano, Patrick Wisniewski, Gil Cabrera, Todd Badger, Joe Edgel, Kevin Yank, the Tesla Owners Club of San Joaquin Valley, Will Stedman, Justin Perez, Jeremy Harris, Chris Beach, Tom Mills, Corey O'Donnell, Aaron, John Cody, Joel Sapp, Paul Casarino, Richard Corley, Chris Osborne, KB, Adam Lavoie, Jason Chalukas, Travis Krenzel, Bruce Otterstein, Tom Behan, Josh Pennington, John from Cream Ridge, New Jersey, Dustin Hart, Derek Finley, Charles Clement, Adam Christie, Damon Klein, Jeff Brown, Jerry Slinger, Clayton Goodfellow, Michael Mizrahi, Kenneth Corbett, and Brian Bertoglio. Next up, the Roadster in Space tier backers. Big thanks goes out to Pete White, Lyle Austin, Steve Radspinner, Fernando Cordero, Lawton from Chicago, Sean Neidig, Neil Weaver, Jackson Wallace, Rolf and Jennifer Evers, Howard Anthony Smith, Victoria Iacovetto, Tesla Hitchhiker 42, Kara Weston, Robert from near Philly, American Home Contractors, GetAmber.com, Doug Carey, Rav, Michael Gallo, and Tony Figueroa. Lastly, another big thanks goes out to the Plaid level supporters. These folks are grandfathered in. The Plaid tier is officially no more, but they're very generous and continue to back me at that level, and so I'll continue to thank them. Thank you to George Cassiopo, Logan Willis, Peter Chalet, Eric Randolph, Dory and Steve Guberman, the Tesla Owners Club of Taiwan, Ron Lee, Charlie Gillespie, Jeff Angwin, Chase Cabanillas, the Lydia family, Aaron Altschul, Jared Brown, Jerome Strack, Jamie Dalton, Mike and Barbara from Louisville, Matt Nixon, the Tesla Owners Club of Wisconsin, Ish, not Elon Musk in quotes, Peter, and the Bear Boys of Colorado. And with that, we've come to the end of a fairly long episode 496. No surprise here on the earnings call shows. Those tend to be a bit longer, but I will not linger any further here since your time is precious. And if you made it this far, I'm grateful for your time, for your attention, and for your interest, right? For your shared enthusiasm in this whole Tesla thing. So thank you all so much. Happy electric motoring, and I'll see you back here next Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific.
Elon Musk, people don't like Elon Musk. The guy founded PayPal and Tesla, and people are like, yeah, but he's a troll and a bad dad. I'm like, so was mine. He did nothing to fight climate change. Also, have you been in a Tesla? Have you been in a Tesla? My buddy let me drive his Tesla. I laughed out loud at how fast it went. Been clinically depressed my entire life, on dozens of medications, in a Tesla for 13 seconds, cured forever.
I mean, I think a Tesla is the most fun thing you could possibly buy ever. That's what it's meant to be. Our goal is to make it's not exactly a car. It's actually a thing to maximize enjoyment. It's maximum fun.